Reports where wealthy fathers have hired clever attorneys, you might say, and in fact the fathers have suddenly no income or reduced their income to zero on paper.
Right,
and
it's a lot of trickery. It's a lot of trickery
and they
in the
take
court.
the woman, mainly the women, back into court, and actually they're filing fraudulent documentation, but the woman who has no funds for an attorney doesn't know usually how to represent herself in court or what her rights are.
Right. The trickery is definitely there. What happens, even some underground companies who would actually take your paycheck stub that you actually have from your company and actually duplicate it. So they look exactly like your paycheck stub, and they change all the numbers on there. So when you go into court, you actually have a true paycheck stub, but all the numbers have been changed on there to represent a much lower income.
Can I get the name of that company? Just
so
kidding.
how a parent can kind of sidetrack that is to really just file what's called a legal subpoena. Subpoena means that you're actually getting the income status directly from the company itself.
Okay, now I know when you that and you're having a hearing for a modification for child support, whether it's to be increased or decreased, that both parties are to provide check stubs and I think it's the last 2 years of tax records. Now, from, again, the reports that we've received, some of those tax records are not stamped or certified by the IRS. So again, if there's a wealthy parent out there who has the means to have a clever CPA as well, and he, again, on paper, makes his customer look good, you might say, in court, what can a woman do about the tax records that are not certified?
The tax records are really rare, to be perfectly honest with you.
They usually 12 months income.
Yeah.
Really?
Just your 3 most recent pay stubs and your last 12 months wages. And it's basically, based upon that. So the party who's motioning for the modification would subpoena the other person's records direct from employers. They could subpoena their bank records. That's a great way to tell the money's coming in and out. So if someone, a non-custodial parent says, I only make $1,000 a month, but you subpoena 12 bank statements and they see $5,000 going in a month, well then it's obvious to the courts that that income information is false.
A lot of times it's really the other party. Okay, if you and I were going into court for the sake of example, and you were the plaintiff against me filing for child support, if I come into the courtroom and I basically tell the judge that I don't have any check stubs, I throw them all away, what some people do. I throw them all away. It's up to you to produce some documentation as far as my income.
But
the burden of proof is on you.
And that is very bothersome because you can't say, I don't have any records, I lost them. That means that if they don't produce any records, then the other person must go and file more papers, probably hire an attorney, to file a motion to compel them to produce.
It doesn't have to get that complicated. It really truly doesn't. A modification in most formats is a relatively easy process.
Well, that doesn't always happen though, because many of the women that complain about the child support issues to a nonprofit organization similar to yours are stating that the judges are turning their heads the other way or telling them they need to bring in expert witnesses into the courtroom. Have you come across anything like that?
No.
Not
very often.
What the plaintiff, in my opinion, what the plaintiff should do at that point in time, request for some type of continuance, okay, to give enough time for that person, for enough time to elapse, to have, say, for 2 or 3 weeks or whatever the case is, if you're paid on a weekly basis, 2-week basis, whatever the case is, give enough time for a 2-week period or a 4-week period to pass so that you can come in back to court at a second date with the actual documentation of your income. So in other words, for the next month and a half, don't throw them away and come into court with them.
Now, would it be criminal charges be filed against a parent who's not paying?
That's a whole different court. And that is something that the individual would have to involve the district attorney's office.
Mm-hmm.
Other than a contempt charge within the family law court, they're taking it to a higher level and status.
So if they file criminal charges with the district attorney's office, can they still go to you and try and get the money collected at the same time?
For the child support, yes.
They
The
can do
collection
that
they continue.
at the same time.
Yes.
However,
Okay.
I think we've kind of over.
File them as well?
The client actually files them themselves, which is just as simply taking them to a counter. But we provide them the instructions on how to get them filed and how to serve notice to the other parent.
Okay.
But you hear it, and you hear a lot about, you know, people screaming bloody murder or someone's.
Right? Because there's thousands and thousands of non-paying parents.
Exactly. But if we really look at it, there's more parents that do not have a court order for child support than actually does have a court order for child support. So you look at the parent, everyone's screaming that no one's paying child support. So why is it that if you're screaming for no child support, you don't have a court order for support?
Right.
So it doesn't make any sense to do that. They're relying too much or giving the other person too much power and letting them not pay child support.
They're letting them off
Go
the
through the
hook.
court structure and let the court structure handle
Right.
itself.
That's Hi, welcome back to Rose Colombo's Issues of the Day. Today we're talking about child support, and we're talking to Mike McCollum and we're talking to Terry Condon, and they work for a nonprofit organization that can help you collect your child support. Okay, Mike, what can a parent do if the custodial parent is not receiving child support, the non-custodial parent wants to visit with their children? Do they have the right to visit with their children?
Well, different ways of looking at that. Legally, ethically, yes. I mean, they do, because it's their child and they should, okay? But legally, there's no mandate actually that states that you're supposed to allow that. It's between the two parties, the mother and the father at that point, to allow the child to see the parent, whoever the non-custodial parent may be at that point, father or mother, it doesn't make a difference. So a lot of times what tends to happen is that one parent will say, if you don't pay me child support, I'm not going to allow you to see the child, okay, and vice versa. So it kind of goes into a tit for tat between the parents, so the child is kind of a pawn in all of it and gets kind of shuffled between one parent and the other, and it's all based on the parent receiving the child support or not. So if you're not seeing your child on a regular basis and you want to, there's legal maneuvers for you too. It's going through the court structure. Just like the parent files for child support, you can file for visitation rights. They're both there. It's already in the law books. It's already written for you. You just have to exercise those rights.
Now,
their income and their funds and their profits and assets. Than a person that would work directly through a company and going through their payroll, which everything is accessible. So if you are self-employed, it's not impossible, it's a little more difficult, it takes a little more time to do such a thing, but in that situation, that's when more of the criminal charges come in for just flat out refusing to pay the child support. So instead of going through measures of going in trying to take property you have, criminal charges for contempt of court is usually the easiest way to go for a person who's not paying.
well, from the letters that we receive, the women complain that the district attorney's office is very slow to take any action, even criminal charges.
That's very
And
true.
they do not like to actually go after non-paying parents based on criminal charges, although the media reports that they're getting tough. But the bottom line is that there are thousands and thousands of non-paying parents. Do you really think that putting somebody in jail is the answer?
It's definitely a good. It's
Well,
definitely,
without a
most average working people don't choose to sit behind bars with very hard-earned criminals, you know, people that have committed some serious offenses against others. So it's not going to be an answer to solve the problem, but it's definitely a motivator for some of the individuals that don't pay their child support.
Well, do you believe that if, say, a blue-collar worker behind bars, okay, doesn't make a whole lot of money, okay, or let's say he makes enough to make a living, earn a living. He's got 2 families to support now. He's been divorced. He's got his first family. He's gotten behind. Can't seem to catch up. Now the DA goes after him criminally, puts him in jail. Do you think that's fair?
But there's so many different ways of
Gets her rocks off, watching Desperate Housewife. Daddy works his ass off, paying for the good life. Kids on the YouTube, learning how to be cool, living in a cruel world pays to be.